I think it was a good opportunity to step back from thinking about how a lot of what I'm doing is routinized with meeting design at this point. And it was a good opportunity to step back and think about, is that really serving clients well?
The first introduction to using design questioning to and science-based, a science-based, research-based approach to improve your meetings, something like that.
And I think it's again, we are, what we have is not good enough either. So when we experiment, we accept that we have this risk that it is not good enough, but what we have is also not good enough. So just do it.
Yeah, awesome. Just do it. I love that one. I love that. We're going to just go with that. So everybody who has not had a chance to say hi, go ahead and when you're ready, go ahead and turn on your camera, say hi and wave, and let's...
Hello.
Hello.
Awesome. Let's make sure we're all in the right place and where we expect to be. So today, we are talking about how to run excellent meeting experiments. I'm going to be using the chat to pop in a bunch of things to help us understand what we're doing as we go. So go ahead and take a look at that. Our session is set to run for 70 minutes today. We are recording, and the overall purpose of this particular one is about exploring what makes a good experiment, learning, what kinds of things you can do to run experiments in your own business, and then learning from each other sort of how we might in fact design some experiments that we can go off and run. So our instructor today is Chris Lortie. Chris, wave. So hopefully you all saw Chris's bio, and he will tell a little bit about himself as we get into it. We're not going to start with the presentation quite yet, though. But one thing I want to tell you about Chris is that I met Chris at the Meeting Moonshot event that was held by Stanford and Logitech last year. And Chris was pretty amazing because as part of this moonshot, they wanted to make sure that what we were talking about was evidence-based. And in that situation, what they mean by evidence-based is that science has tested it and proven it, and you can count on it. So how do you base things in the evidence? Well, somebody better go look at all the evidence. And that's what he did. So how many papers and things did you review altogether, Chris?
About 350.
Right. So that's a lot of, if anybody's read academic journals recently, that's a lot of academic journal reviewing. And he put together an amazing presentation that told us what the state is in the science. So we are going to have some time to explore some of that. But before we do that, we invited you all to tell us about an experiment that you had run that had not gone particularly well. And we did this as a way to, first of all, learn, but also as a way to award prizes. And today, to begin with, we want to go ahead and give you the prizes. Five people had winning experiments that we want to tell you about today. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to read one of these experiments, and then Dr. Lortie is going to talk about what we thought was great in this particular failure. And then if it's your failure, I would love for you to wave and own it. So the very, very first one I want to share with you, one of our participants tried using Monday.com to run their Scrum meetings. So these are a kind of check-in meeting. And they found that one team, everybody used it. And in another team, No one participated at all. So Chris, what did you like about that one? Why did we choose that one?
I have so much to say about that, but the short answer is introducing new tools that fail or maybe don't get traction with everyone is a really great way to enable, engender, embody a growth mindset. And I think the lesson of that failure in particular, right, is it's okay to say no. So I hope the person, when the spectacular failure happened, said, great, let's move on. We'll never do that again. And that happens to me all the time in teaching contexts. So this term I tried Kahoot, which is a little quiz with symbols, and everyone was, not everyone, but we'll never do it again. So it made me feel, sometimes we try tools that we never use again, and that's an opportunity for growth and learning.
All right. And the winner with that one is Tanya Taylor. So Tanya, yay, everybody say hooray to Tanya. So I'm not sure if I see her yet, but if she is here, she can wave. Okay, next up. One of our participants tried an icebreaker, had been learning about how important it is to get everybody involved right at the beginning of the meeting. And in the time of the pandemic, this participant thought, well, great, why don't we, well, since we're all on video, incentivize getting everybody to show up on video, try doing a model your favorite COVID mask icebreaker. Unfortunately, only 15% of the staff showed up with a mask. So Chris, what did we like about that one?
Everything. I liked everything about it. When I brought my mask, just to tip my hat to that person. That was fantastic, because I believe in the response, it said like 15% of people showed up with a mask and the rest didn't. That doesn't mean that the rest of the team doesn't wear a mask when they go out in public, but I really liked it because it, in a funny way, and lots of people have modeled masks, recognize that even though we might feel alone and we're in the bubble, of Zoom at home, that we're all dealing with some of these larger challenges. So it was, for me, it's like a love-hate. It's keeping us safe, but I'm exhausted by it. And do I want to model it? Do I even want to wear it? So it just gave me a chance to work through some of that. And it's funny that almost no one showed up, and you're like, well, I don't blame them. So that's great.
So that winner is, it's Sue Mitten. Sue, do you want to say hi?
Hi. How are you?
Congratulations.
Not to mention that we have somebody who's hard of hearing, and we've had discussions about that in terms of mask wearing when we return to the office. Yeah. Mm.
Wow, interesting.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for sharing. These are awesome. Okay, next one. One of our participants was running basically a strategic gathering that brought together lots of folks from lots of places, and they'd run these before. And this time they decided they wanted to try something new. Instead of just going through presentations and whatnot, they were going to bring the group into a circle and invite people to come into the center and share their stories as a way to kick things off. This is a method known as the fishbowl. Whole session is designed around having this wonderful sharing moment. They get to the session, they set up the circle, they make the invitation, and nobody takes a seat. Ouch. Tricky situation. So talk about replanning on the fly. Chris, what did you like about that story?
It resonated with a lot of the challenges in teaching that I've been struggling with in meetings where, and I agree, Elise, that, I love breakout rooms too, and we've talked about that. But sometimes people don't feel like speaking, right? And so in the teaching context, when I've run lectures or breakout rooms, I've had students strike and they say, no more breakout room. I'm not going anywhere. I don't want to talk. I just want to be here and be present. And that's it. And so that opportunity to fail has really reformed my teaching. And maybe someday when we're back in person, it'll be a good reminder to me that it's okay to give people permission not to speak, that the expectation shouldn't be that we're always on the spot. And sometimes it can be really challenging, right? When you're put on the spot. and whether it's on Zoom or in person. So I really like that one because it was a good reminder of permission and respect.
Yeah. And so the winner for that one is Kim. Kim, do you want to wave and say hi?
Hi.
Yay. That's a brave.
Positive. Thanks.
That was a brave experiment. All right. And then our last winning experiment is this one. One company was having trouble getting people coming to their meetings on time. So they created a rule that the last attendee had to do push-ups on video. And somehow that didn't work out very well. So Chris, talk about what you liked about that.
It's funny. I just laughed so hard because it was the carrot and the stick, right? The carrot is like, reward on time and the first 3 people will get a prize, but don't be the last one. Otherwise you're on the spot huffing and puffing. Yeah, it was just funny. And I thought, oh my gosh, I so want to do that for my meetings, but it would certainly fail. So it was just fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that one. And I think, what a great incentive on the other side, right? Like get there early so you can see the person do the push-ups, So our winner for that one is Emil. And I don't know if Emil is here. If they are, go ahead and unmute, wave and say hi. Don't think they're here. Oh, winner, loser. Oh man, what a bummer. All right. Well, that's part of how you experiment with incentives to see if incentives increase participation and increase attendance and whatnot. Now, Chris, that was one of our experiments for this particular session. What's your take on it? How'd we do?
Good.
Yeah. All right.
Failed miserably. It showed that we're okay with taking risks and trying new things.
Yep. All right. So to get more clear on some of these ideas around experimentation and this difference between experimenting in a way that gives you evidence-based data to help you make decisions and changes in your meetings versus the idea of experimentation, which is, hey, I'm going to try some stuff out to improve my own personal learning. We are going to turn it over to Chris. And Chris has prepared a presentation for today. And are you going to screen share or do you want him to just follow along?
Screen share would be great.
All right. So you can also follow along there. And Chris, I'm going to stop sharing my fabulous videos, my audio snippets, and it's all yours.
Thank you. So hi, everyone. My name is Chris. I'm an ecologist, so I study interactions between living individuals and the environment. And I think about meetings a lot because, as we will go through my deck, meetings are an opportunity to experiment, and we meet all the time in different contexts, and we might apply different labels to it. But there's an opportunity in thinking about meetings more holistically to live, work, and function very differently. So I wanted to just take a moment and do a little mixed media and a little tip of the hat to Bob Dylan. Firstly, there is no perfect experiment. And if you substitute the word experiment for meeting, there is no perfect meeting, and that's okay. Secondly, you are never random. So you might do your best when you pick your teams or your breakout rooms to be random, but you never are. And I encourage you to consider using a tool that helps you be more random. And this is great for equity, diversity, and inclusivity, but it's also a nice opportunity to genuinely mix things up for better ideation, brainstorming, collaboration, and a fresh perspective on things. And I hope that some of us at the end of this session will design experiments and meetings that are really different because of that. And the final one is my secret agenda. And an experimental mindset always wins. And what I will do now is tell you what I think an experimental mindset looks like, and then hopefully we can make the connection and link it to meetings. I am now sharing my screen. Can you see the screen? Yes, great. I will make it even bigger. It doesn't have to be super big. So I went for a Star Wars theme. Great. So experimental design, and this was recognition of Joe Allen and Matt Chatter and others that have presented before in the series, is both an art and a science. And the science of it is that we experiment all the time as individuals with ourselves and with our teams and with our classes and with our cohorts. But sometimes we might not document the feedback or the evidence in a way, one sec, some noise, that is scientific, so to speak. And the only difference between scientific experimentation and the experimentation that we do every single day is whether we capture data and evidence in a way that allows us to reuse it and learn from it. So experimentation is just a more formal process of introducing change or observing change and trying to learn from it. The art part is, it's a really creative process, both in terms of learning and in implementing them. And for me, when I teach experimental design, and I do teach experimental design, it's simply structured observation. And in all exercises associated with structured observation, good thinking and good design precedes all data. And for us in this context, data could be evidence in any form, feedback from the team, a survey, your capacity to meet desired or proposed outcomes, your realization of some of the indirect surprise serendipitous outcomes from a meeting, i.e. we didn't achieve our goal, but we are more cohesive as a team. All these different things can be formalized in some way as data. So in short, an experiment is structured observation, and that can be observation of a process that's already happening, i.e. you're already doing meetings, or one that you intervene and change in some way. And focal processes, in this session we're talking about meetings, can be organic, i.e. oh, they're going to happen, we have a meeting every Tuesday, or we're going to have this meeting, let's plan it and get together, or planned, i.e. I'm going to treat this meeting as an experiment and either do structured observation on it as it would usually happen, or I'm going to change one thing. I'm going to plan a change and then measure an outcome and see if we achieved our goals more effectively. There are three types of experiments. In the kind of old school philosophy of experimental design, there were only two. And the two are observational. You go out, watch some birds and trees, or people in rooms, or people working in a factory or in some context, and you don't really change anything. You introduce, of course, a bias of an observer effect, but the observation lets the system behave organically and express its complexity without intervention by you as the observer, to whatever extent that you don't introduce bias. Secondly, manipulative, and this is kind of the gold standard in a lot of evidence-based medicine, or in sports, or in a lot of the social sciences or managerial research. You change something, you manipulate what you think would be a key variable or factor, and then measure an outcome. And often, but not always, you would have a control situation where you ran a meeting as usual or did some social process and you didn't introduce that particular change. But really now there is a third category that's been around for better or worse for about 10 years. And these are data-driven experiments where they're neither really observational nor manipulative. It's an accumulation of evidence in some form. This can be anecdotal, descriptive, observational, video, numbers, tables. And then we apply an experimental mindset to something that's already happened and say, can we understand what some of the drivers or factors were that related to these outcomes? Or can we use this trajectory of past change, think about climate, and try to look forward and predict what it would look like? So we are genuinely doing global climate scale experiments, but we're not doing them in a very controlled way, nor are they reproducible. So we use this third category a lot in very complex, large systems. And this could apply to your institution or class or larger groups where it might be harder to do an observational experiment, a manipulative experiment, but you can look at data through time longitudinally and ask, were there key levers or flippers that introduce change through time that we can experiment with or use for description or for prediction. So in doing the research with Logitech and Stanford and Joe Allen and others, I really had to work hard to get my head around what a meeting is. And for me, in the simplest sense, a meeting, you can have a meeting with yourself, but maybe that would have its own challenges. Most of the time, a meeting is when two or more individuals come together. And it generally is, you know, in all the survey data and the social scientists, no one really expresses too much joy about those interactions, hence the lightsabers. But it doesn't have to be that way. There can be positive interactions too. And in my line of work in ecology and evolutionary theory, both in natural systems, and people are natural systems too, we think about game theory a lot. So these are models of interactions, i.e. meetings, between two or more interactors, i.e. people, with potential, not always aligned, conflicts of interest to explore optimal strategy. So you can imagine in a meeting context, and universally, when you poll people that are the host of meetings, they say, oh, that meeting went great. Or when you poll people that did the most talking in a meeting, they say, oh, that was a fantastic meeting. When you survey all the other people that didn't have a chance to speak or didn't call for the meeting, their response scores in terms of satisfaction are always lower. So another way to conceptualize this would be, we might not always have the same interest in attending a meeting. The host might have, or the person that calls the meeting, a particular set of outcomes, and then some of the participants might have another set of outcomes. And that could be check in with colleagues, listen to an update, and survive the meeting and move on to their next task. Whereas the host might be, oh, I need feedback on this, I need to produce this thing, or I need to get people to sign off. In game theory, and meetings, experiments, and games are all very similar, there are different strategies that we can think about that are stable through time. One of them is the most common probably in a lot of meetings that aren't very experimental, tragedy of the commons. We all show up, the environment becomes trash socially because everyone's there, we all have our own agendas, and the emotional well-being, the functioning of the team drifts downward. Ecologically enlightened ones have a much flatter curve, and their meetings or experiments or games that are focused more on the quality of the interactions. And finally, evolutionarily enlightened meetings, experiments, or games are ones that think about a longer term trajectory in terms of time. So again, tragedy of the commons is everybody shows up, treats this meeting as something that no one has ownership of, extracts whatever resources they can and moves on, depleted. Ecological mindset to a meeting as a game or an experiment would be, well, at least the interactions were positive. So the host or the director of the meeting is focusing on team cohesion, and we didn't fight, everybody got along. Finally, an evolutionary one, again, will be long-term health, longevity, and productivity of the team. And that would mean that sometimes it's okay for herbivore events or predation or the lion to get eaten. It's okay for some of those interactions to be negative once in a while, but not all the time, because it promotes the long-term goals of the team. So these aren't really koans or little mysteries you can contemplate on, but as I did in terms of the Bob Dylan throwaways at the beginning, I just wanted to remind you that there is no perfect experiment or meeting. And when I was discussing preparing for this opportunity to collaborate with you with my 8/turning 9-year-old in 2 weeks, first thing that popped out of her mouth after months of Zoom school was, do you even really need a meeting? I was like, oh my gosh, what world do we live in that my 8-year-old, that's the first thing that comes out of her mouth. Not like, oh, hey, that's cool, Dad, that you're doing that. It's, do you even need a meeting? Oh, so good. And then the game mindset or the experimental mindset, again, would be, it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. And that's that more evolutionary mindset in terms of longevity or performance of the team over longer time horizons. I would argue that semantics and ideas for meetings really matter. And bringing treats to meetings, great, always a good call. Every meeting is an experiment and potential data, if we define data very broadly, and we should. It's a game, and I urge you to consider it as an opportunity for design, whether it's push-ups, wear your masks, wear your Halloween costume, express risk, make a little joke. And I wanted to say that in a lot of the failures that people reported, there is no failure in an experimental design mindset. In all the educational literature, instructors, teachers, and professors that joke or use outdated memes of Simpsons that most of the students don't understand now, the students still appreciate the fact that the instructor tried and failed to be funny. So whether you were funny or not in the teaching context didn't matter. You put yourself out there, made a bad joke that's appropriate, or a joke that wasn't funny, and the students at least recognize he or she is a human. They tried, that's okay. It's the exact same with every meeting. It's a design opportunity. And even if it doesn't work, you're signaling to your team when you host a meeting that you're willing to try things and that you're open. If you accept this premise that you need to design meetings, collect data in the most simple sense could be feedback from your team about how things went anonymously every single time you get together, a 1 second debrief. Accept that there is no perfect meeting, i.e. embrace that longer evolutionary trajectory that, hey, we're in this together for whatever duration, 6 months, a year, many years. Let's try and get through all these things and achieve our longer term goals, eye on the prize, and be open to testing varied strategies to meet. Lots of great literature on this by Alan and many others, right? The Surprising Science of Meetings, walking meetings, standing meetings, video, no video, scribble notes down, cue cards. You've seen it all. Try them. And if they don't work, just keep trying. And what works today might not work tomorrow. What worked 6 months ago will certainly not work today with how we have to work and live. Here are the principles from my course on experimental design that I teach to the life sciences. A specific terminology facilitates clear design thinking. So when you meet and you re-meet, treat this as an opportunity to educate and align values and terms about what our goals are and how we're going to talk about our meetings. So give your team or your collaborators the same words that you want to use to measure outcomes and progress and change in the meetings. And here are some of the examples from experimental design. A factor. So there's two kinds of things in experimental design thinking. There's variables, i.e. they change, and constants. Constants we never think about. We're like, oh, we're stuck with them. Variables can be labeled in one of these different ways. A factor is one that elicits a change in a response or an outcome. Levels are the number of different steps in a factor. So for instance, if the factor is duration of meeting, the levels would be 5, 10, 15, 75-minute meetings. So they're the variation within that variable that you think might be a factor. You think might predict what the outcomes look like. A covariate are the things that vary in your team or in your meeting that you don't get to control most of the time. How well rested they are, how much caffeine they had, how clear the connection is, how well the signal is getting across, how many hours they've worked this week. They're things that are varying alongside your main drivers of interest that you probably don't get to control. Block is when you see patterns of natural variation in your groups, early arrivers, latecomers, people that have done the work, people that haven't done the work, tasks that are associated more with logistics, tasks that are more associated with ideation. There are often natural groupings of the variation, and in experimental design theory, we say block them, put them into boxes or blocks or buckets, and try and control for that. And so if you were all using the same terminology, you'd say, hey, we're blocking it up this week. We're going to do, this is an ideation meeting. Okay, we're blocking it up this week. I'm sorry to say, this is purely a procedural logistic meeting, 75 minutes long. I am so sorry. And we're going to work through functioning. Replication. You should always give things, even those push-ups or masks, one more try. Could be everyone's overwhelmed, didn't get the email, their mask was getting laundered, etc. Give it one more try. So replicate, do it more than once. And pseudo-replication is be aware of non-independence in your samples. So people that work together in the same team or in the same department or have the same challenges or learning styles, these aren't bad things. These are just observations that you might have as the researcher, observer, host, leader, facilitator, founder of the meeting, that things are not often independent. Experiments are not, or almost never, about statistics. They're always about this thinking about design and structured observation. Always do a Parley experiment. If it's a critical meeting with stakeholders or board members, maybe that's not the time to do the toilet paper experiment or the push-ups, right? So you do the pilot experiments, the little fun things in context that makes sense, that minimize risk to the team and cost. And you make that clear in your language and terminology and working with your team that this is a context, some meetings, where we're going to joke around and play some games and experiment. And maybe in other ones we really can't afford to because there's a stakeholder or someone outside and we don't need them to see that kind of failure. Experiments should always be iterative, i.e. adopt a sandbox philosophy. So in my experimental design course, we call it the experimental sandbox. It's okay to play around, build things, knock them down until we figure out what works, even in the context of how we meet. This is a statistical argument, but it absolutely makes sense. Ideally, you change one thing at a time, a few times. Duration, 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 duration. Everyone's video off, just pay attention. Everyone's video on, just change one thing at a time. If you need to, because it just makes sense in the complexity of your system, in the context of meetings, change more than 2 factors. But never more. Don't change 3. Keep it at 2 because you can still manage trying to partition out how well your different performance outcomes turned out by factors. After 2, it usually gets intractable, both in terms of the evidence or the data or the statistics, and in terms of our capacity to kind of manage causality. It's like number of digits in phone numbers, which no one remembers anymore. Anyway, balance factors by levels to ensure power. So if I'm going to do my factor as change duration of experiments, meetings, I want to do not 100 levels. I want to do a few levels that make sense, kind of short, medium, and long, for whatever makes sense for your team. 15 minutes, 35 minutes, 45 minutes, and an hour, 75 minutes. And apparently you've probably seen this. People really like meetings that aren't an arbitrary amount of time. So never have a 60-minute meeting. Always have a 52-minute meeting, or 75 minutes or 70. Always have a number that doesn't seem like a default, because then even if you didn't think about it, it tries to show that you thought about how long the meeting should take. Larger experiments are more powerful than many small ones. And by more powerful, that means, again, experiments are already iterative. Try it a few times before you give up on it, and try it at larger scales, because there's always between individual variation in how well we respond to it. And me as an individual, varies from meeting to meeting in terms of fatigue, how well prepared I am, how on top of the materials I am. So doing larger, more consistent experiments is more powerful trying to figure out what works for your team than a bunch of small ones that you give up on. Maybe the push-up one should never be done again, but other examples you should keep trying. Sorry, Kim, I'm kidding. Track progress quantitatively and qualitatively. So quantitative and qualitative, everyone in science, a lot of the sciences, treats these as really discrete binary outcomes. Quantitative are numbers, qualitative are words, but it's actually a continuum, right? So how clean is the bathroom, the happy face in the airports? Remember when we used to go to airports and it was how clean the bathroom is, you hit the happy face? That is both qualitative, i.e. the happy face to the red face, and quantitative, i.e. can be turned into numbers. So I encourage you to be okay with people documenting meetings and reacting however they want. So one of the teams that I'm a part of, and it's all Zoom, of course, we have some rules now about how we give feedback. And at the end of every meeting, we go to the participant view and we use the little blue hand to vote, not to react. And the blue hand means, yeah, I'm okay with how this meeting went. And then if there's no blue hand, that means you weren't a satisfied customer. And that's both qualitative and quantitative. So the host gets a poll and sees 15 out of 17 respondents put their blue hand up and 2 didn't. So it's qualitative, and then I'm just kind of giving a quick vote. Yeah, that was okay. And it's quantitative for the host. That kind of thinking is okay. The other thing I've seen people do in meetings recently are, sketch your reaction and hold it up to the camera. A lot of what's lost right now, of course, is the feedback. I can't hear you or really see you nodding and agreeing with me. I feel like I'm speaking to a void. So in a lot of the teaching context, I stop, and maybe a lot of my students don't want to show their face. They hold up something. I say, hold something up, and it could be a little funny sketch or reaction. Let people track progress in very different ways. That's okay. Include the team, and include the team both in who gets to host, who gets to introduce the change, and how we provide the feedback. And this is huge in the science of meetings, that meetings that are not owned always by one individual, i.e. the boss, the founder, the leader, are more likely to be reported positively by more than just that one person when there's co-ownership of the meeting process. Here's my workflow for experimental design for meetings. Think and observe. So look at a couple of meetings that you don't intervene on, maybe track progress in some way. Could be check, no check, that didn't seem to work, I noticed friction. State how your system works. Write down whatever those observations are in words for you. Seems like majority of participants kept their video on, we're engaged, we're kind of bouncing around a little bit. People were looking down, taking notes. Seemed like a win. Video helps. Do a pilot study. Try a meeting or a class or a little breakout. It could even be just a test meeting for the purpose of testing a new way of meeting, where half the respondents have their video off, half the respondents or participants have their video on, and we only use chat. Maybe that will bring out people that are working from home, have a dog, pet, kids, all kinds of challenges. They're doing it from their laundry room. I've seen it all. You probably have too. Maybe there's a lot of reasons that video doesn't work, and we shouldn't punish people for not being able to participate via video and give them an opportunity to do it by chat. So that's where the pilot study comes in. Make predictions. And this is, look at those things that you thought about and observed that are varying, that are not constant, that can change. And think about, well, maybe if I give people a mechanism to not participate by video in other ways, I'm going to get higher levels of participant by the whole team. And I'll tell everyone we'll save the chat. So even if you don't have time to pay attention to the speaker, I'll save the chat, edit it, anonymize it, and make it available to the team afterwards. Cal Newport does a great job about, should you invite everyone to every meeting? No. You invite the people that you need to that meeting, and then just to make sure the rest of the team feels included, you email them afterwards and say, hey, great, there was this meeting. I don't want you to feel left out, but you didn't need to be there. Here are the notes. You can do that with the chat and Zoom, and then test it. That's it.
All right. Thank you. So that's whirlwind tour of meeting ideas, concepts, specific hard language we can use, which of course we are going to instantly and automatically do, right? So this is both an opportunity to learn, and then we cement that learning by practicing a little bit. And the way we're going to practice this one today is we're going to go into breakouts, and we are going to design, oops, hold on a second, let me get my thing all set. We're going to design some experiments. So we're going to be in groups of 3 to 4. And when I send you into breakouts, go ahead and click right now, for those of you who are still here and ready to play, on that Google Doc. It's a set of Google Slides. And when you get there, what you're going to see is that it has at the top some information about meeting experiments. I see people popping in there right now. That's very exciting. And then it has these instructions repeated and on the second slide. And in the third slide, the purple one, we have those people who applied for prizes also talked about experiments they might like to run in their team. So we did some work to reword those a little bit and anonymize them and bulk them together and say, okay, here are some experiments that groups might want to try. So when I send you off into your breakout room, you and your group will have 15 minutes to just pick one. You can pick one of the examples or pick something completely different. And then talk about what are some variations you might test. And as you look at those variations, you know, what kind of predictions do you have about how those might work? And what sort of data might you collect? You're going to have 15 minutes to work on this, and then we'll bring you back and invite a representative from each group to just sort of share what that discussion was like. So I'm going to do a little bit of rearranging as we have our folks opting out of experimental design. There is an experiment happening right there. Okay. And Chris, I'm going to throw you into a room, but you can come right back and be with me. So if you run into questions as you go ahead and pop back and we will help you with those. So any quick questions before you go?
I do. Is the
Yeah.
goal mostly to complete slide 4 and 5, or what's the difference between slide 4, 5, and then slide 6?
Oh, this is awesome. So
groups.
when you go off
Different
into
groups.
your room, as you're whisked away, it will say you're entering breakout room 1 or you're entering breakout room 3. Go to the slide that matches the number
Good.
of your group and fill that out. That way everybody gets their own slide.
Super.
All right. 15 minutes, off you go. Welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back. As soon as everybody else joins us, we're going to take some time to hear what you learned. Hello, hello, hello. Let's see. I know they'll be here any minute. Everybody else, you guys were eager. You guys were done. That's what I'm seeing. You were done, and you're like, we're done. We're out of here. We're back to the main
We were
group.
watching the timer at the top, and I was like, oh no, we have 6 seconds left. So we were done. And then you gave us another minute.
Awesome. All right. So I know there are more people. I know there are. Where are they? They're coming back any second. It's going to be fun. We're going to have that magic whoosh where everybody goes whoosh. Oh, speak of the whoosh. Here it is. Whoosh, you're all back. Excellent. So Chris and I had a little bit of a little tussle kind of conversation early on when we were designing this. And so we now have a quick poll before we do our debrief. And the poll is, what do you think about breakouts, folks? And your answers are, just rate them. Do you love them? Do you enjoy them? Are they okay? Would you rather not have them? Breakouts, what's your take on this? And it looks like I've got votes in from everybody but one person. All right, there we go. And now we're going to end the poll and share the results. Everybody see that? Chris, turns out most people enjoy breakouts just fine.
I am. It must depend on who the people are. It really must.
It
Well,
must,
you know,
right?
you remember that half the people left when you said you were going to do breakout rooms?
Yeah.
So we're self-selected here.
Bias here. Exactly.
Nice. So of those of you who are self-selected in, let's do some quick debriefs. So can somebody from group 1 talk to us a little bit about your experiment?
Sue, you're muted.
That always happens. Here's my screen. And you see my screen? Yes?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. Good. This is always an interesting experiment in and of itself. Okay. I was with Nancy, and thank you, Nancy, because this was just so exciting for me to have a look at this. And I actually picked from the purple slide number 3, because I have a leadership cohort coming together after 7 months apart. And I want to encourage them, incentivize them, before they get into our virtual. We're going to have 2 90-minute virtual meetups or gatherings. So we talked about what are the strategies to increase positive expectations, and landed on just opening a conversation space for them before they get together, and to pose some provocative questions around well, leading, and leading in the time of COVID. These are just things we were throwing out. So, well, and then of course, the invitational email would have language that would be encouraging as well. And here's some language. We want to have an energizing discussion when we get together. So here's this, open room for you. And take the time, etc., give them the coordinates and get them together. So the predictions here are, that is going to create connection and involvement beforehand, and a real jump start to lively conversation. And Nancy, jump in if I don't, thinking jump start for Nancy here too, if I've missed something. And then, the data that we'll be looking at is, just the level of participation in this pre-work, participation at the outset of the meeting, and then we talked about, those experiential, the experiential data, the enhanced connection, that's been recreated or reset, for this cohort, and a spirited discussion, during the 90 minutes. So that was ours. Questions, comments, Nancy?
Yeah, no, you did a great job. So the thing I just want to emphasize, I was saying to Sue, I see a big correlation between people who do the pre-work and people who are really present in a meeting, as long as the pre-work is reasonable and relevant. If it's like bogus pre-work, no. But if it's, yeah. So anyway, no, I thought this was great. So thank you, Sue, for volunteering your real life situation. It made it easy.
And thank you, Nancy, for all your great ideas.
All right. Thank you both for sharing with the rest of us. Little jazz fingers for everybody. And then I would love to hear from the next group. So in the interest of time, because we do have 10 minutes left, if you want to summarize highlights when we get to your bit, we'll go and keep these at 2 minutes a piece or less, okay? So, and I apologize for not being... we're dropping that later. So let's talk about group 4. Group 4, what was your discussion like? Who's your representative? That's the zombie hands.
I guess Cynthia and John are going to want me to be the representative because we looked at a scenario that I shared. So slide 7, the question was, what's the most effective way to get input from 15 participants on 20 different ideas?
Oh, cool.
Of course, in an online meeting. So we came up with 2 testing strategies. One is to pull them in the session after they were given a chance to contribute and to ask them how many of you feel comfortable going into the next part, which would test whether or not they feel they were able to contribute. And the second was to survey them afterwards, after the meeting, as part of a standard evaluation survey, and to ask them if they agree with the statement I was able to contribute to as many ideas as I had wanted, offering them to say from strongly disagree to strongly agree. There you go.
All right. Did you guys have any predictions about which might work better?
We did not get to that point, but if John and Cynthia want to make predictions, go ahead. No, not at all. That being said, if you want me to expand for just 20 seconds, so this is from a scenario that happened just earlier this afternoon, because I'm in Belgium, so now is the evening. The predictions were that I think part of them would say yes, but most of them, maybe 3/4, would say no. So that we would get a lot of, for example, in the second scenario, we would get a lot of neutrals to strongly disagree, but not many agree or strongly agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is a pain.
Fascinating. Well, if you run that one, we all want to hear how it goes. So if you have a chance to leave comments for us in the class or later on, that would be really great. Thank you very much. And Chris Lortie has dropped an experiment for us to do in our own time afterwards. But now let's hear from group 6 with the little purple happy devil. Happy Halloween, everybody. Oh, come on. Who from group 6 would like to share?
Sorry, I thought I was unmuted and I wasn't. So we were talking about what the most effective way to get input from the team was. So a few of us who had some examples of this. And Chris was sharing how he has a meeting with 50 people and he often will only hear from a select few. So he tried asking some open-ended questions through a survey monkey as a trial. And then we discussed some other options, like maybe the survey monkey's the barrier. So maybe putting the questions in an email or asking multiple choice questions. Or maybe people will come to the meeting and share them verbally as opposed to writing them. So he thinks his open-ended questions are a good start, but there's going to be some evaluation. Then we also talked about the 80-20 principle and how getting quality feedback from 20% of people is better than getting so-so feedback from 80%. So looking at the outcome measure of quality of information and conversations.
Fabulous. I love these. I love how clear and that you got through all 3 sections. So good job, guys. Thank you for sharing. Final group 7.
I guess I can talk on that one. Where's my group 7 slide? So we chose the question, what is the impact on meeting quality when we take turns leading meetings? And I suggested this one because I lead a lot of meetings and it gets tedious. Wouldn't it be nice if somebody else would do it? And also thinking from my own perspective, what would it be like for me to watch one of my team lead the meeting and have to sit on my hands the whole time to not jump in? That would be good practice for me. So we talked about test strategies, asking for volunteers, and then just assigning, kind of having 3 different levels of how much control do you give them? Do you let them just pick the topic, run the whole meeting? Do you give them really detailed, here's the agenda, here's all the guidance, here's the outcomes I want, but you're going to be talking during the meeting, right? So you're really running the meeting from the background. So a whole range of those different strategies. Predictions, we thought we might see a lot of different styles, different comfort level and skills. I had some worries that people would try to replicate the leader's normal style and not do their own, but was hopeful that some people would really step up to it and enjoy that opportunity to lead and show us some of what they're thinking that they don't normally get to talk about. And for data, some observational stuff. Was there a stated objective? Was it met? Did the meeting actually follow what they planned to do, or did they lose control in some way? Those kinds of things. So yeah, it was an interesting conversation. Dave, did you want to add anything else to that? I think our other folks have had to step off already.
No, I think he captured it all there, Cindy.
Okay.
Thanks.
Awesome. I love that one. Cindy, that actually turns out to be one of the practices we frequently see in high-performing teams. So if you ever want to talk about exactly how they go and set that up, let me know. I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Chris, do you have any reflections on these before we wrap up today and do our final bit of input?
No, great. The last one I've tried too. It is challenging to sit on your hands. And if you don't give any ground rules, I've tried no ground rules at all. You know how, like, when you've run enough meetings with your team, you know how you have to manage things to keep it ticking along? When I've asked other people to host, they let other people go on to on, like, oh, please keep it moving. So, yeah, Elise, I'd love to hear about how high-performing teams empower other members of the team to lead, but have the meeting still keep going. Because I haven't seen that go as well as I'd hoped it would. On the other hand, if my agenda is to give people an opportunity to practice and just talk, that's a win. But the meetings themselves, they don't go as well.
Yeah. All right. So I think we've learned an awful lot in this particular session about experimentation, about a number of experiments that Chris and I ran. Some went well, some didn't go as well, some things about running sessions exactly like this. But before we go today, I want to hear what you're taking away. And for those of you who are unaware, this session is one of 10 that we are doing in conjunction with the 10 science-backed rules for meaningful meetings. And it's an educational series, right? So these are all basically master classes with one person who focuses in on one session, and we record them, and then we post these as part of the courseware. And one of the things we want to do is to make sure that those people who are walking through this later, who couldn't be here today, have a sense of what they should look for when they look at the recording and decide whether they're going to watch it or not. So either in the chat or please signal and say it out loud. And I love it when people do this out loud. I would like to know what you think the bottom line up front should be for the people who come and see this later. So if you had to summarize one key learning from this session for a friend, what would you tell them? And anybody who would like to speak, I would invite you to unmute. Oh, Bruno.
I guess it's a quick overview of, or a first introduction to using design questioning to and science-based, a science-based, research-based approach to improve your meetings, something like that.
Nice. Anybody else? Who's got something different?
I think it was a good opportunity to step back from thinking about how a lot of what I'm doing is routinized with meeting design at this point. And it was a good opportunity to step back and think about, is that really serving clients well in some cases?
Thank you.
May I add also, Elise?
Yeah, please.
Well, what I learned is, and I think it's again, what we have is not good enough either. So when we experiment, we accept that we have this risk that it is not good enough, but what we have is also not good enough. So just do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Just do it. I love that one. I love that. And on the front, there's a lot of other great feedback here. I see you need the experiments to change. I see learn from design failures. I see most people experiment already. Yes, maybe in little ways. I think the boldness, Chris, that you've given people to like, go ahead and actually do this. And some of the things, my takeaway for this one is, the echo that you had of, get your team involved, let them know it's an experiment. That gives people permission to do it. It gives you better data. Everybody learns, everybody gets better. And speaking of learning and getting better, we would love your feedback and your participation going forward. So in the follow-up, you will get an email from me that has a link to a more formalized feedback survey. That one's anonymous, where you can tell us things that worked and things that you didn't think worked. You'll also get email to the course where this will be posted and the recording, which we'll leave up and open free for 10 days if you want to go through and look and revisit some of these concepts. And finally, our next session in this series is on November 5th with Michael Wilkinson. He is the guy who taught me facilitation the first time, when I actually got it in my soul that it's a magic superpower. So I hope that he can do some of that for you. And I will hope to see many of you there. Have a fabulous, fabulous rest of your week. And I'll stick around for 10 minutes for anybody who'd like to chat.
Thanks, Chris and Elise and everyone else. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and for anybody who's got prizes, I'll get you prizes. I will. I completely forgot to say that. I mean, it should be obvious, but